All right, Jason, are we ready to go?
Yep, you're all set. I'll make sure the link gets posted. And then
Okay.
just let me know whenever you're done.
Thank you very much. All right, we are going to get started, and I apologize for the late start. Welcome to the Certification Advisory Council meeting. This meeting is thankfully being webcast today. We're meeting virtually via the Zoom platform. I would like to remind participants to mute yourself when not speaking and unmute when speaking. Please ensure your video is on so others can see when you talk. If you are having connection issues, for sure, turn your video off. And then if you could turn it back on whenever you want to talk or ask a question. You can always indicate if you have a comment or question. You can use the hand icon. You can just wave at us, whatever works. We're a small enough group that I think we can see you. We have two applications under consideration today. Medicine College of Biomedical Engineering Technology is a renewal application, and Texas School of Health Sciences is an initial application for a new school. Coordinating board staff present today are Dr. Tina Jackson, Assistant Commissioner, Workforce Education, Paul Schuler, Manager and Staff Liaison, who coordinated the virtual site visits or on-site site visit. Were they both on-site, Paul? Yes. And I am Kathy Mayert, Director of Private Post-Secondary Institutions. We also have Nikki Jenkins, our program specialist, with us from her phone. So thank you very much, Nikki. I want to welcome our Certification Advisory Council members. CAC members, after I state your name, would you please identify yourself and give your institution and title? Dr. Dorothy Langley.
Good morning, everyone. I am Dr. Dorothy Langley, Jarvis Christian University. I am the Dean of Adult and Continuing Education and Workforce Initiatives. And I'm cold. Okay.
And Dr. Langley is our chairperson. Dr. Gina Anderson.
Morning, everyone. I am the Associate Dean for Educator Preparation and Partnerships at Texas Woman's University in Denton. Good to see you all.
Dr. Cheryl Sneed Green.
Good morning, everyone. I am at Prairie View A&M University, and I am the Assistant Provost, and we haven't gotten that ugly weather yet.
Nice. Mr. Tom Ronk.
Yeah, good morning. I'm Tom Ronk. I'm with Houston Community College. I'm the Associate Vice Chancellor of Workforce Program Research and Development. It's a long-winded name.
Dr. Jane Michella.
Hi, everyone. Jane Michella, Executive Vice President and Provost at Parker University in frozen North Dallas.
And Dr. John Vassar.
I'm John Vassar, Service Provost at the University of Mary Hardin Baylor.
Great. And we will have the institution representatives and the site team leads introduce themselves at the point that the CAC considers each of the Certificate of Authority applications. And welcome, Nick Halleck. I see our medicine representative has just joined us. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm Nick Halleck, the president of Medicine College. Thank you very much, and I apologize for being late to the meeting this morning.
No problem.
We assumed that because of weather, our college is closed, that all institutions would be closed this morning. So since this is virtual, apparently it's not closed. So good to meet all of you, and thank you for the welcome.
We carry on. All right. At this time, I'm going to turn the meeting over to our CAC chair, Dr. Dorothy Langley.
Yes, good morning again, everyone. And I'm glad to see that we are virtual, as he stated. We never close in higher ed. So we're going to go ahead and, hey, I'm at home doing this, but okay. We're going to go ahead and get started. Today, we're considering a few things, so we're going to go and get started right quickly. First thing on the agenda, have the CAC members reviewed the November 3rd, 2022 meeting summary notes?
Yes.
Good, great. Are there any revisions to be noted?
Not for me.
Okay. At this time, if there are no revisions, we're going to ask for a motion and a second to approve the notes from November 3rd.
I move to approve the notes from November 3rd.
Thank you.
And I will second the notes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay. Any discussion? It's really hard seeing these little squares on my small screen. So if you see me scrunching, I'm trying to see. Okay. Let us vote then. We will ask that you vote individually, please. And we will start with Dr. Anderson.
I vote to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Dr. Sneed Green.
I vote to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Rourke.
I too vote to approve the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Masella.
Approve.
Thank
Vote to
you.
approve.
Thank you. And Dr. Vassar.
Vote to approve.
Thank you. And Dorothy Langley votes to approve. Thank you so much. The November 3rd, 2022 meeting summary notes are approved. They were, the motion was carried by Dr. Masella and then Mr. Rourke. At this time, we would say that the minutes are approved, if no questions. Thank you. Today, excuse me, someone say something? Okay.
Oh, I think we're good.
Okay, good, thanks. Today, we're considering the application for the Medicine College of Biomedical Engineering Technology, which is medicine, for its 4th certification of authority. They have operated in Dallas, Texas under 3 previous certifications of authority since April 2017, offering its Associates of Applied Science in Biomedical Engineering Technology. Medicine is seeking institutional accreditation from ACEP, the Accrediting Council for Continuing Education and Training, a THECB recognized accreditor. ACEP has accepted Medicine's initial accreditation application. A site visit by ACEP is estimated to occur in May or June of 2023, with projected review by the ACEP Accrediting Commission in July or August of 2023. All the CAC members have received the site visit report and Medicine's acknowledgement of the report. At this time, we're going to ask the Medicine representative to introduce themselves, name and title, please.
Good morning. I am Nick Halleck. I'm the president and CEO of Medicine College. And with me is Stephanie.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Pedrosa. I am CFO and registrar for Medicine College.
Thank you so much and welcome. We're glad that you are here. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Cam to remind the CAC members of the Certificate of Authority process and the validity timeline. Cam?
Thank you. Each certificate of authority is valid for 2 years. This would be Medicine's 4th and final certificate of authority. If recommendation for approval, staff anticipates that the CAC and commissioners' recommendations will be brought to the April 2023 cause committee and full quarterly board meeting to consider the institution's application. As a reminder, the CAC makes a recommendation to the commissioner and to the coordinating board members. The commissioner can make his own recommendation. The recommendations go to the coordinating board at a committee meeting and then to the full board at a quarterly meeting. This certificate of authority, if approved, would then be valid from April 2023 to April 2025. Institutions can apply for and receive certificates of authority for a total of 8 years. At the end of 8 years, the institution must have received coordinating board recognized accreditation. Therefore, this would be Medicine's last certificate of authority. At the end of the 4th certificate of authority, it is expected Medicine will have received ACET accreditation. Certification by the state of Texas is not accreditation, but merely a protection of the public interest while the institution pursues accreditation from a recognized agency. Dorothy, I'm turning it back to you.
Thank you so much. At this time, we're going to ask the Medicine representative to provide a 5 to 10 minute overview of the institution's degree program and only additional accreditation plans for the new members. Would that be you, President?
That would.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for the time this morning and the consideration for approval of our certification. Medicine College, a little history of Medicine College. It started out as a humanitarian organization delivering medical supplies to countries in the developing world, and evolved into a training program for international students in 23 countries around the world, and subsequently evolved into the college that we are today. But that pathway was started in 2013, training military veterans. So we migrated an international program back to the States to build a domestic program with General Richard B. Myers, with the mission and purpose and objective of training U.S. military veterans, which we do now primarily. That is our primary focus and mission, to provide the highest level of education possible in the shortest period of time possible, with the objective of providing the skills and competencies necessary to our U.S. military veterans so that they can achieve and become professional biomedical technicians, repair technicians, field service engineers in the healthcare industry. We have large relationships with industry, Siemens and GE and other major brands with whom we work for placement in the industry. So we pride ourselves on the highest level of education for our veterans in giving them the support and education and skills necessary to have lifetime changes and lifetime careers in the healthcare industry. I think the hallmark of our school is quality. We have small classes, 12 students each. We are very hands-on applied science. We have a large quantity of very high-end medical equipment for which we train on in very small units in cohort. They're cohorts, not typical class semesters or terms. We have cohorts, small cohorts of 12. That means they start at the same time, they finish at the same time. So rather than the typical 24-month associate degree, as we refer to here, we have an associate degree and some pathway certificates, but our associate degree is a 7-month technical program that is probably the only college in the United States that does sort of emulates the medical METC program or the biomedical engineering technology program in San Antonio for the military. We have replicated that on the civilian side, if you will. But we provide that almost exclusively to, and it's not just exclusive to, but almost exclusively to with priority for support of our military, U.S. military veterans. So I think that's probably the core of our school and our educational model. And the hallmarks of our model are quality, the uniqueness of the immersion course, the intensity of the 7-month program, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. We have an unusual staff and faculty that are very dedicated and committed. We have all been at the Medicine College for at least 10 years. I have been at the helm of Medicine College and the director of the development and evolution of Medicine College since 2004. So we're all very dedicated and very committed to our mission and objectives. So I think that's the core of who we are. The rest is in our report, the evaluation report that we just recently underwent with Paul and the THECB site visit. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you. Would you be able to give us just a brief overview of the team report itself, President Halleck?
The team report, I don't actually have the team report in front of me. I apologize. I don't have the exact team report in front of me this morning. We went through the various standards that were required of us successfully. I believe, as I read the report correctly, we were successful in those standards, in meeting or exceeding those standards. I don't recall that there were any deficiencies in the report. Paul, perhaps you could correct that, or
Let me jump
something like
in. Let's let the team lead give a summary. I may have missed that, Dorothy, in your agenda.
Oh, okay, no problem. Thank you. I'm sorry.
I'm George Williams. I serve as interim provost and vice president for academic affairs, as well as vice president for student affairs at Our Lady of Lake University in San Antonio. I got a pleasure to lead the team for the site visit in December to at Medicine College of Biomedical Engineering Technology. And overall, my colleagues and I, 2 other colleagues joined me, had a really interesting and very fruitful visit with Medicine College. I have to say that pointing out several things: the equipment, simulations, the curricula, as well as the partnerships and relationships that the college is developing, will certainly put them in a good spot for them to move forward with continuing their accreditation. Based on the documents that we were provided by the institution, our site visit interviews, we interviewed board members, current students, alumni, staff at the college as well. We conducted classroom observations. The committee determined that there were no areas of significant concern. All 24 areas were no significant concerns for this particular college. I'm happy to respond to any questions that you may have. But like I said, the visit was very much fruitful, and it provided a great opportunity to learn more about what the institution is doing to continue efforts in higher education. I also have to add that the croissants that were served during that time were also amazing as well. So I just needed to point that out to the crew as well. So been missing out on those croissants lately there, Nick, but overall the standards were met.
Thank you, George, for your kind words.
Well, thank you so much for that, Dr. Williams. Now I think we all want a croissant, and that was and that was my oversight. That was my oversight. I got to see these croissants. Okay, so we're going to move on now, and I'm going to ask the CAC members if they have any questions at this time.
This is Tom Runk. I just want to first say thank you to Dr. Williams and the visiting team for such a detailed evaluation. I did read over it and noticed all 24 standards were met, so I'm very appreciative of that. And then I want to really give kudos to Medicine College and Nick and Stephanie and your entire team for the incredible work that you've been doing over the years. I know you're in the last 2 years of this cycle, so I hope you've been working on the accreditation side through this. Very pleased to see what I read about from the site team. So it's pretty remarkable. Just a couple of questions of curiosity more than anything. One, and maybe you had it in here, and we've been going over so many documents I may have forgotten. Have you established any articulation agreements? Even though you're a workforce program, this particular pathway, having the competitive edge of a bachelor's, I think would be beneficial for some of the graduates later on, right, in the career progression. Have you established those type of relationships in the area?
Formal relationships, no. With industry, we are more so related to industry because we're industry oriented. That's our main purpose, is to drive them into industry for careers in the industry. I would say this is not a negative, but it is not a necessary requirement for entry into the industry to have even an associate degree. They are primarily interested in the technology that we provide to them. We encourage all of them to go on to get an associate degree. or we transfer in and give them an associate degree if they have those courses, the general education courses. We encourage them for management level, for advancement in the industry, let's say, or for management level positions in the industry, if that's what they're pursuing, is to pursue higher education. We have informal relationships with other colleges, such as the American Military University. We have created a bachelor's degree with the American Military American University, a bachelor's degree where they take our associate degree, which is typically an applied science associate degree, is typically not an advanced into higher education because it's applied science and it doesn't correspond to the typical courses that are part of the requirements for a bachelor's degree. But we've created several degrees, bachelor's degrees, that relate to the industry, as in IT management, for example, where they take our associate degree and they credit them forward as electives into the bachelor's degree. So we've identified 2 degrees and an informal agreement with American Military University, where they take our graduates and move them forward into a bachelor's degree and award them 60 credit hours for electives to get them into a theory, so that they have an unusual bachelor's degree where they have an applied science foundation and a theoretical or theory remaining 60 hours in one of the 2 bachelor's degrees that we've identified with them.
Yeah, so it does sound like you've created at least an informal articulation agreement with these, and so
Yes.
would recommend to try to make it official, to have official articulation agreement, because it really is beneficial for the students to try to get all of those 60 credit hours accepted towards their bachelor's, so that they don't only get, say, 45, and therefore they have to then do 135
Right.
in order to graduate, right? And
Right.
so, but it sounds like you've done that
We have.
informally because of your great relationships that Dr. Williams has already talked about. So it's just a recommendation more than anything,
Right.
because I totally understand that this is applied workforce, but nonetheless having that opportunity for progression for a bachelor's is certainly beneficial for those that wish to go that route.
Right. And I would say one of the challenges that we met in talking to other universities about those relationships and formalities of partnerships and so forth is that they typically base those contractual relationships on a larger quantity of students, an influx of a larger quantity of students. We're a very small school. We have a footprint, a geographic or footprint, class lab footprint of a maximum of 48 students at the moment. In cohorts of 12, the most we could offer at the moment with our footprint is four cohorts a year of 48 students. That's a smaller quantity of students than they would typically consider for a contractual relationship, but we have informal relationships with them, and we'll continue to pursue formal relationships with them if we can.
Yeah. Well, really appreciate everything you provided and what you're all doing. Madam Chair, that's all the questions I personally have.
Thank you.
Dr. Langley, turn on your mic.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you so much. My grandson came in, so I had to hit mute. But I do want to appreciate Mr. Brook for that information. And also wanted to note that the site report did indicate that all the standards were met to their satisfaction. So I do want to make sure that was put into the public knowledge. Anyone else have questions at this time?
I have a question,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
I might have missed this going through the documents that we have. And I know that you talked about, this being a small program that caters to industry. I guess my question would be, with the rise in student debt for students, what is going to be the average cost for a student to finish this program? How expensive is it going to be? I guess my concern is, when I finish this program, am I going to be so in debt that if I get a job, I'm not going to be able to pay that off? Is it going to be, the benefits going to be worth it as far as the cost to how much I'm going to make?
Yeah, good question, especially in today's environment of educational costs. To date, over the 2006, over the 16 years that we have had a school evolved into a formal college, no student has directly paid Medicine College for education. So no student has incurred any debt whatsoever. The veterans do not incur any debt whatsoever. They are qualified by the U.S. Veterans Administration for post 9/11 GI Bill, yellow ribbon grants, matching grants, etc. So to date, no student has paid, borrowed, or directly funded tuition at Medicine College, and we don't have any additional expenses. When they come to us, they're provided with all the materials. They don't have to buy books or supplies or anything. We create all of our own proprietary information, our own manuals, our own books. We create all the information in-house. It's all proprietary. So they come to us with no expenses whatsoever other than what their GI Bill provides them or provides to us for their tuition support.
Thank you.
Thank you. May I do a follow-up question to Dr. Sneeze Green's question? How do you recruit your students for the program?
Well, since our primary population target is military, we have two recruiters, professional recruiters, retired military who recruit at various military bases in Texas, Fort Bliss, Fort Hood, JBSA, Fort Sam, and we just recently have one of our recruiters is in Hawaii, opening up the bases in Hawaii. So it's through direct recruiting.
Direct recruiting. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Any more questions, CAC members?
I have one.
Yes, sir.
I do want to also add my thanks to Dr. Williams and his team for the visit and providing such an excellent summary for us. President Halleck, I'm curious about the next steps in terms of accreditation, how that process is going, and what your expectation is for completing that big step.
Thank you. I think we actually submitted along with our application a calendar of events, of expected events from ACET. We have submitted our application. It's been approved with our finances have been approved. We've submitted an ACER. We recently had a 2-day site visit preparation, and we are on target for our final ACER submission mid-March. We've been accepted as, I suppose, as a candidate at this point. We are due to have an on-site visit audit in end of May, beginning of June, and on calendar scheduled for completion of accreditation and award of accreditation in August.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Dr. Vassar. I do have another question from whoever. Probably Dr. Halleck. Has medicine made any succession plans or progress or process? Because we understand that you're very involved in advising with the students. So is there any handoff to that?
Succession plans. Yes. So I have currently a 5-year contract with medicine. So they're always in 5-year contracts. I think I'm on probably my last 5-year contract with Medicine College. We don't have formal written succession plans, although I and the board have talked at length about succession plans and identified that issue. I have started to work with a member of our staff in developing that member of our staff in a succession plan, but it's not a formal succession plan as yet. It's a little bit down the road, but we have talked about that and identified that as an issue and a topic that we need to discuss and formalize over the period of my contract.
May I also add, Dr. Langley, this was also a conversation that was raised during our site visit as well. And Nick is absolutely correct. He is working through it. Although the standards that we review doesn't necessarily speak to a succession plan, that was one of the recommendations outside of our report that we offered the college. We do know that it is important, and President Halleck has a lot going on with involving himself, and rightfully so, in the college operation. But it is necessary for a developmental succession plan. And so he mentioned to us that he was working directly with the board as well as other staff members to identify what that looks like moving forward. We recommend that he handles that pretty swiftly, because as part of him moving forward, the college moving forward with accreditation, that may be part of an area of concern moving forward. So he is aware. We've discussed that very much so during our 3-day visit.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Anyone else, comments or questions? I don't see any. Okay. Well, we're going to move forward. Thank you to everyone who asked questions, and we do appreciate all of the responses that we have received. The CAC is tasked with making a recommendation to the commissioner and the coordinating board regarding the current application. Based on discussion and questions today, the CAC can make a recommendation to either approve or deny the application. The CAC can also defer a recommendation and ask the applicant for additional information if it believes there is not enough information to make a recommendation. So at this time, I'm going to ask the THECB staff if they have any requested restrictions or conditions should the CAC members vote to recommend or approve the medicine application for a certificate of authority, and that would be Cam.
Yes, thank you. Based on the site team's assessment that medicine met all of the standards during the site visit, coordinating board staff does not have any requests for restrictions or conditions.
Thank you, Cam. At this time, I will ask for a motion and second to either recommend or approve, to recommend approval or recommend denial of the Medicine College of Biomedical Engineering Technology application for full certification of authority. If the CAC members would rather defer a recommendation and ask for additional information, a motion can be made to delay recommendation until further review, which would be a list of specific standards or information that CAC would like to have before making a recommendation. And if the recommendation is denied, medicine's application will skip to the voter section. So at this time, we will entertain a motion if we're ready to vote. I'm sorry.
Regina Anderson from TWU. I move that we approve medicine's application for a fourth certificate of authority.
Thank you.
Jean Michelle, I'll second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Okay, thank you. At this time, we're going to vote individually. The motion, let me just read this part first. The motion is to recommend approval of the Medicine College of Bioengineering Technology application for a fourth certificate of authority at this time. So we'll ask for each person to individually vote, please. And we'll start with Dr. Anderson.
I vote yes to approve.
Thank you. Dr. Sneed Green.
I vote yes to approve.
Mr. Roth.
Yes to approve.
Thank you. Dr. Marcella.
Yes to approve.
Okay, and Dr. Vassar.
Yes to approve.
And myself, Dr. Langley, I vote yes to approve. Thank you so much. Okay, at this time, I'm going to turn this over to Cam.
Actually, Dorothy, you can go on.
We can go on into the next one. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. We appreciate that. We're going to move into our next order of business at this time. This is consideration of the application for initial certification of authority from Texas School of Health Science. Today, we are considering the initial application for the Texas School of Health Science, or TSHS, for a certificate of authority. The applicant would operate in, where's that? Westlake, Texas? Never heard that.
Westlake,
Where is
Westlake
that?
in the Valley.
Oh, the Valley. Okay, thank you. CAC members have reviewed the site visit report and TSHS's response. So I'm going to ask this time that the Texas School of Health Science representative introduce themselves, name and title, please.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Dr. Langley. My name is Kyle Hunt, and I am the president of Texas School of Health Sciences. And I am here today with our interim chief academic officer, Dr. Susan Sportsman, and our board of directors chairwoman, Dr. Lolly Lockhart. And if it's okay, I was going to give a brief synopsis of our proposed associate degree college and then hand it over to Dr. Sportsman.
Okay.
And we are a proposed associate degree college that will offer nursing as its first discipline. In 2007, I had a close friend who was diagnosed with a vascular necrosis, which is a rare hip disease where the blood doesn't flow to the hip. Shortly after that, he was referred to Duke Medical Center in North Carolina for a rare hip operation. And after he received some poor aftercare, he had to have several blood transfusions. And my mother and stepfather, my mother being a nurse and my stepfather being a physician, called up to the hospital, and they realized that the nurses had not read his charts, which led to like his sutures on his incision swelling up and having blood transfusion complications, things like that. So when he got out, he said, gosh, I feel like your mom, and having talked to those nurses and paying attention to me saved my life. And it wasn't long after that I had read several articles about the nursing shortage in Texas and the nation, that it was costing, hospitals, communities, just billions of dollars, especially in rural border communities. So I went to the Board of Nursing and began talking to them about a program where the learning institution could possibly be on the hospital campus or even inside of the hospital for a more immersive, clinical education. The model is such that the hospital would give the in-kind donations of a classroom, space, and skills lab, and provide for the upfront costs of the students' education so that they didn't have to come out of pocket with student loans or anything like that. The second part of the idea being that those students, once they graduate from an immersive clinical environment, will be more prepared for a life as a nurse after graduation. So there were and are a lot of initiatives with residency programs going on after nurses graduate. But what this model is designed to do is commit to 40 hours a week of didactic and clinical learning in the hospital. And so the model that we, for 14 years, I talked to hospitals and I tried to get it done. And they would either be willing to, offer the real estate if we paid them, or maybe chip in some kind of concession to the tuition, but nobody would fully commit to a program that supported the students' learning. In 2019, July of 2019, I was introduced to a CEO in the Rio Grande Valley who went to the Air Force Academy with a friend of mine. And I think he kind of understood the model of, your tuition is subsidized if you commit to employment or to be part of the Air Force, in our case, to work in the hospital after you graduate. And in July of 2019, we started working on a partnership that would completely subsidize not only the associate degree college and nursing program inside of the hospital, it would subsidize all the students' tuition. based on their commitment to work for 36 months after they graduate and pass the NCLEX RN. So long as the students, when they graduate, if they complete their employment, their 36 months of employment, they do not have to pay back any of the tuition costs that were supported by the hospital. We started working on a partnership agreement that outlined this in a legal agreement. It was in November of 2020. In October of 2021, we finished negotiating that agreement, and it's between 3 hospitals in the Rio Grande Valley that are a part of the Prime Healthcare System: Mission Regional Medical Center, Knapp Regional Medical Center, which is in West Laco, where the campus will actually take place inside their hospital, and then also Harlingen Medical Center in Harlingen, Texas. After the partnership negotiation was agreed to, I was working with a woman, Dr. Jeanette Hartshorn, who became ill and could no longer continue. The Board of Nursing thankfully introduced me to Dr. Susan Sportsman, who was on the call, and so she has served as our interim chief academic officer and helped us develop both the proposals to the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board and Texas Board of Nursing. Dr. Sportsman will continue her role on our board of directors, but we have hired the site report, instructed that we needed to hire a permanent CO, and we have hired that, Dr. Melinda Rodriguez, who Dr. Sportsman can talk more about later. That is where we are right now. The community down here is certainly excited about it. I know guidance counselors at the hospital are excited. We have something that we think can really serve the community. Not only do we have the foundation hospitals, but we also have 2 local foundations, the Knapp Community Care Foundation, who is awarded a grant of $371,000, and the Clayburgh Foundation that's in South Texas is also awarded an additional grant. So, we're not there yet. We are working as hard as we can to complete the standards. And we feel like the coordinating board and board of nursing have been very supportive and directional in what we need to do. But at the end of the day, this is a community initiative that will serve, great students in underserved medical communities. So that's what we want to do, is make a difference in the rural border area community down here in the Rio Grande Valley. Dr. Sportsman, I guess if it's okay, I would like to hand it over to you. I know when we started working together, and it was around February of 2022, and I think she can talk more about kind of the academics and the curriculum standpoint and what we're doing.
We can't hear you, Doctor.
Dr. Sportsman, I think you might be on mute.
Okay, sorry. All right, now can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. I have, as Kyle said, I've been a part of this journey since last year, devoting lots of time to this, and I'm excited for what it can do for the community. And we seem to have incredible support. I've been in education and nursing for a long time, and this has been particularly interesting and exciting to see how much the community wants this. I'd like to start by saying I want to do 2 things really in quick time. I'd like to tell you about what we have done since the site visit to shore up our program. And then I'd like to tell you why I think this school has a special sauce that will be very beneficial to those students who participate. So first of all, let me say that we were delighted to have and to hire Dr. Rodriguez. She is from the Valley, or has been there a long time, has taught in the area as a nurse practitioner, and has a doctorate in nurse practice. So I think she'll be a perfect fit for this program. The Board of Nursing has asked that I work with her for 6 months in a mentoring role although she's certainly got many skills, but to be sure that she understands and believes in the structure that we have set up, and that it, she is competent and confident to move on to provide the leadership of the nursing program. We have started that process. We started in January the 11th. We have Zoom visits every 2 weeks, and going through the process, and then listening to her concerns and working through the process. So it will be she's going to feel as much about this as ownership of this program as the rest of us do. So we will continue to do that through the time that Dr. Rodriguez is comes full time, which would be the 1st of June. And at that time, as Kyle said, I will step off the steering committee, which is the organization between the hospital and the school to keep things going. I will of course step off on that because I will no longer be in that role, but I will continue to be on the board. I want to see what happens going forward. I feel a commitment. I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the recommendations that we had that we have responded to. Probably the one that gave me the most heartburn was we didn't really have a good grasp of the welcome course numbers. And so what we did, although we looked at the site and so forth, but what we did not accurately reflect the number of hours. And I want to thank Dr. Schuler, who got me connected to Dr. Hiller on the staff, who explained WECM to me, and I'm so grateful. We have made the change to all our number systems. I believe they're all correct, and I'm really grateful for he helped us to see that some of the stuff we thought we were using was no longer valid. So that does make a difference, and I'm very grateful to them. We also by policy made sure that our faculty was teaching and had the requisition education that the coordinating board requires. We will have faculty who teach in the support courses. They of course will all, and this is in the job description, they will have the 18 hours required in whatever emphasis they are teaching. Our nurses, we have 2 full-time and several adjuncts moving through the curriculum. They will all have MSNs. There is a rule in the Board of Nursing regulations that says if you want to hire someone that has a bachelor's in nursing and has a master's in some related site, and I can give an example that's happened to me before, is hired somebody that had a counseling degree as a master's, but had the BSN, and they had the appropriate number of nursing hours. And then the associate degree program, it's 6 credit hours. And so I don't anticipate that we will necessarily do that, but the board of nursing does allow you that if under certain circumstances. And so we have integrated that into our policies. I'd also like to talk about what I think is unique about this program. As healthcare has gotten more complex, it becomes harder and harder to prepare students to go out into the world and be proficient at day one. So one of the fact that it is an immersive program, the students and the faculty will be there 40 hours a week. Sometime it'll be not necessarily 8 to 5, depending on clinicals and so forth, but committed to that. The faculty will be committed to the students in terms of both teaching and student advising. I think that will bring a close relationship. Each of the CAO and the 2 full-time faculty will be assigned 10 students during the 18-month period, and they will be the advisor and will be required to meet at least twice a month. So I think that will be helpful. We're also, as most schools do, we're planning to have orientations beforehand, a boot camp to sort of help make the transition from high school or other college work to nursing school, which is always a bit of a shock to folks. So we're going to do some work there. One of the things that I think is really great is we are going to have on Friday a study hall, and students will be expected to go to that. And it can be a variety of things. The CAO is going to develop this. It can be review of content that is difficult. It could be test reviews, because the only cohort is that there's one cohort at a time. So all students can go to this study hall, maybe review of test, standardized test, and then we hope to have some presentations and other work with our colleagues at the hospitals, physicians, nurses, and so on. And they have expressed a real interest in doing that. We also are going to have prime nurses will be mentors to the students. So we'll have 30 nurses from the 3 hospitals that will work with the students in a mentor role, which we think will connect them all to the hospital and to us, and they'll have a lot more experience that way. So, you know, I think it's an interesting opportunity to show what can be done. And I'm excited to see what is going to happen. We do plan to be accredited by ABHES. It is in the proposal. We can't be accredited until the first cohort is graduated, but we can start the process, and we plan to do that the latter part of the first cohort. Once we have the ABHES, then the faculty will make the decision about which of the nursing professional organizations will be accredited. So I'm excited, and I really would be glad to answer any questions you might have about our response to the site visit or anything else you'd like to know.
Okay, thank you so much for that overview, and we'll get to questions in just a few minutes. Let us ask, thank you so much. Let us ask the TSHA site team leader to provide us with an overview, please.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. So I'll begin by introducing myself. My name's AJ Randolph, and I serve as the Senior Vice President for Health System Finances and Chief Operating Officer for the UNT Health Science Center in Fort Worth, where it's also frozen, and we're out another day. So I would start by mentioning Dr. Williams mentioned having croissants during the site visit. Well, we didn't have croissants, but we had a lot of food. I gained quite a bit of weight during that 3 days. So on behalf of the site visit team, I wanted to thank the Texas School of Health Sciences for their hospitality during our time, and thank Dr. Schuler and the ECB staff for their assistance during the whole process. Also, I wanted to commend the president and CEO, Mr. Hunt, there for his persistence, his commitment, and hard work in getting to this stage in this long but essential approval process. It was very clear from reading the initial application materials and through the interviews and the tours of the facilities that TSHS and its partners are committed to making this what I consider an innovative program that addresses the critical workforce need in healthcare. Their commitment to making this a reality, that was clear. I'm going to cover to keep it brief, just the standards that we found not met at the time of the visit, and then some of those areas that they responded to regarding suggestions for improvement or areas of concern. So I will start with standard 2 that the site visit review found not met at the time of the visit, and that was related to qualification of institutional officers. So our main concern in this one was Dr. Sportsman serving really as a consultant, not a permanent chief academic officer. But as she mentioned and Mr. Hunt mentioned, they have since finalized a permanent chief academic officer. And from our conversations, I know that was in the works during the site visit, but they just couldn't divulge those details. So Dr. Melinda Rodriguez, she rounds out that leadership team and has, as you can see from her CV and the materials, excellent qualification and experience, and complement Mr. Hunt's experience, just as Dr. Schwartzman's did at the time. The other area of concern in this one was related to the composition of the board of directors, and the response that they provided. The updated composition addresses and satisfies any concerns we had about that composition. So they've added Dr. Lockhart to that board of directors and again, satisfied those concerns. The second one was standard 3 was governance. At the time of the site visit, the review team was really unable to determine if the board of directors could focus on accomplishing the mission and the purpose of the school and the nursing program. As you read in our report, there was not a lot of evidence demonstrating the board of directors was truly an active policy-making body or had the authority to carry out the mission. But I will say they mentioned the governance guidelines, I should say, and they've recently adopted policies and those governance guidelines, as well as changes to the composition of the board of directors. They included those details in the response, and I would consider that standard now met. They addressed all that. And I know they were well on their way to meeting that. They just needed to meet and adopt those governance guidelines and things such as conflict of interest policies, those sorts of things. The next one here was regarding the distinction of roles. Again, as I mentioned in this last standard, it was addressed in their recently adopted governance guidelines, and that was adopted at their December 22nd board meeting. I will mention in standard 8 program evaluations, areas of concerns we had related to including or using specific measurable outcomes for the goals. In their response, they made those changes, included specific measurable outcomes to each of those assessment areas. And that was sort of I don't say minor, but an area of concern. Let's see, we also found that the measurement method regarding student services was not necessarily appropriate criteria. They've since adjusted that in that piece of it as well. So we would consider that satisfied. Let's see here. I'll go back to my notes. Standard 11 regarding faculty qualifications. So we found that met, but we did have some questions or asked for some clarifications. The concern was related to needing clarification on the number of graduate level hours required for nursing program faculty. In their response, they clarified that if the master's degree is not in nursing, the candidate or the faculty would have to have a bachelor's in nursing, and then 6 credit hours, if I'm reading my notes correctly, in nursing appropriate to their teaching responsibilities. So that was all clarified, and they've updated all the documents related to that. Okay, faculty size. The significant area of concern was adding clarification regarding specific terms used in the faculty handbook. They've made those changes to the handbook and incorporated those suggested changes. Let's see, standard 13, regarding academic freedom and faculty security. The concern was related to the need to include policies related to promotion, non-renewal, termination of faculty appointments. So they have since clarified in their response the various components, including faculty workload, evaluation, and termination. They also included a detailed process for termination should that need to occur. And they clarified tenure and promotion does not apply in their particular situation. And they described the process for ensuring all the faculty receive and acknowledge their review of the faculty handbook. That was a concern at the time since met. In standard 14, related to the curriculum, Dr. Sportsman just addressed this. When this was related to the WECM numbering system, which I had not heard of until I got to that site visit. So I'm now just a tiny bit familiar with that. But they've since addressed that, and it appears to have completely clarified all of that in a revised course numbering system. Our concern at the time was just transferability of those credit hours related to that. And so it appears those are addressed now. Let's see here. Standard 20, the Part A, accurate and fair representation in public advertising promotion. There was a suggestion including citations. There was a proposed marketing message that included a statement about the length of the program. They have since revised or clarified that their message was accurate. It was most that can be completed within 2 to 3 years, if I remember correctly. But they've clarified the message and added including general education requirements. So that suggestion was taken and satisfied. Let's see here. Standard 21, my notes, academic advising and counseling. The standard was met, but they provided clarification related to the HESI A2 administration process. So no concern there. This standard 22, student rights and responsibility. There was the concern if the issue arose that a student had a grievance against the chief academic officer as a faculty member, how would that get addressed? So there was a procedure put into place of how the grievance can be brought forth to another faculty member. There's a process outlined there that addresses that completely. Standard 24 was learning outcomes. There was concern related to the need to include a systematic program evaluation. So they completely, they added an addendum to their nursing total program evaluation. Includes evaluation of all the 11 student learning outcome expected by the nursing program. So that one was completely met in our opinion. I guess that was it. So I've just opened it up for any questions.
Thank you so much for your report. I do appreciate that, as well as everyone on the call. Excuse me. So at this time, let's open it up for questions from our CAC members regarding the site evaluation report. And the floor is open.
I have a couple quick questions. When you talked about student admission and other things related to students, will the students have, will there be a handbook, or is there already a handbook in place that they're designing for students to be able to appeal admission, for students to be able to appeal, I didn't pass the HESI, or I didn't pass one of the nursing exams at the end. What do I do going forward? Would I automatically put out the program? So the students, do they know what happens?
I think our student handbook is clear in that regard. We use standardized, or we will use standardized tests throughout the program in order to assess how well students are doing, so we can intervene. But the standardized tests that we use will be part of their grade, but it will not be back in the old days when people used to do, if you don't pass the exit HESI or whatever exam, you can't graduate. There will be none of that. We've got a good system, I think, for remediation. We have a policy that we developed that gives the formula for what we're going to use. We hope to have a holistic admission process. And so we have a number of things that students must do. They must have a visit with the CAO or whoever is appropriate for that. They have to write a short essay about why they want to be a nurse. Our grade point average is included from high school or other college. We've given, when the site visitors came, we had the idea, but we didn't have the specific formula involved. And so, because really I was thinking, well, maybe the faculty ought to be involved in this, but they suggested that we do one, and then the faculty can, adjust as they feel is necessary. So at any rate, we've got a very good system of what we're going to use for admission, and that's in the policy. do we have a way that students can challenge getting in? I don't know that we have that written. I guess we could. We'll be admitting 30 students, and our hope is that, it'd be great if we had more students than that, but we don't intend to have, for the foreseeable future, to have more than 30. It is possible that if we get really good students, which we're hoping to do, that there will be some who might be qualified but are not getting in. And I don't think we had anticipated that somebody could challenge that. I think we have really good documentation that the admission process is not, it's broad enough that I don't think it could be challenged.
I just ask because here in academic affairs, I just think about the most of the complaints we get are from nursing students. So just making sure that you have all that stuff where they can go back and look at it and say, oh, it's here.
Yes, and we do have a lot of access to the chief academic officer. And so I hope that, I think we have sufficient, but I know exactly my academic officer, when I was a dean, just hated that my students were always in her office. So.
And then my second question centers around faculty. I mean, I like that you stated that you have you're going to have boot camp and orientation and transition and all this good stuff for the students. But are we, since you're hiring all new faculty, are we doing the same kind of things for them?
Yes,
because they're going to be teaching practicums and clinicals, and we want folks to know what's expected of them, but there's no gray area. This is
right, exactly. And the fact that, we are expecting faculty to be available to students for 40 hours a week, perhaps face-to-face, is a bit of an unusual thing for faculty. I mean, sometimes faculty have a little more leeway to come and go as they would like. So we have written in the proposal the new faculty will come on in a staggered way. And so Dr. Rodriguez will be able to work with those. The two full-time are coming in right before the first cohort comes. And so they will be given a little time then to, make sure they know about all what courses they're teaching and that kind of thing. But Dr. Rodriguez will have an opportunity to sort of give them an understanding of what the special sauce for this is. We have much of that is in the faculty handbook. We have a student handbook, a faculty handbook, So we have given them time to have time before they have to go to class to have some opportunities to think through what their role will be.
I was going
to my final comment. I just have one comment. Because of faculty workload that comes through our office through me, and just make sure you really have that under control and tightened, because the biggest discrepancies we get with faculty workload are nursing faculty because of the clinicals and the practicums and all the stuff that they have to do. So, and we, of course, we have a policy through the A&M system, so that kind of governs what we do. But we also have a rule that's through our university. Right now, we're having each of our colleges develop a college faculty workload manual that supplements the university one, but because there is a lot of challenges when it comes to the faculty workload. So I just don't want you to get caught up in that particular.
Thank you very much. I know exactly what you mean. And to try to decide whether clinical is harder than lecture has been sort of the framework of my administrative life. But we do have it very specifically pointed out in the faculty handbook. And that was one of the things they asked us to do, and we have done. And I agree with you. And that's one of the things that is going to be on our discussion, Dr. Rodriguez and I, because you're right. Nursing is peculiar. And she has had experience with in directing a program, but because there's some special sauce and we're going to do things a little different, that's one of the things she and I are going to spend some time talking about. Not as many faculty as you have, but certainly I'm sure it'll be the same.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have a quick question that's really just kind of global or just about process. What, in your perspective, it kind of was the disconnect between the site visit results and then your response? You know, with the number of concerns that were noted, but then they were all pretty much addressed in your response. Was it maybe that you needed more time to prepare for the site visit, or is there something about the process itself that we can learn from as a certification advisory council? I was just really curious about that. It appears to be a little bit of a disconnect in that during that time.
Well, let me talk about the nursing piece, and then I think Kyle can respond to the other. In one case, the Wickham thing, we really were just confused and didn't do it correctly. And it took me a while to figure out what we had done wrong. But they were very helpful, and certainly Dr. Schuler and Mr. Hillen were great. So that was just an error that we made. With regard to some of the other things, like how many hours the faculty would have in their specialty, I think we understood what we were supposed to do, and we understood the Board of Nursing regulations, but perhaps we didn't explain it as well as we could have, or maybe the folks that were looking at that didn't see it in the same way we did. But we did I asked the Board of Nursing to clarify that what our understanding was correct. And so I think those things, are just things that happen. So, from the nursing perspective, I think perhaps it was a combination of, there was probably some things we should have added. You look at stuff and think it's clear, and then it's not. And then I will say that perhaps this is a little bit unique in the sense of a small number of students. Their difference in the way that they are expected to come to school and work that they're supposed to do. And, it's way different, I think, from having a cohort of 100 students that you met every semester. So I think that might, and our site visitors, the nurses, were coming from that framework, and they were wonderful and very nice, and helped me to start on the trail to understand Wickham. But I think the different perspectives might have had something to play. And then, Kyle, I'll let you answer with regard of the governance stuff.
Ma'am, was your question specific to Wickham? Is that right? The Wickham, is that what your question?
No,
was?
she's wondering just about why we had so many
yes,
that we then fixed.
Okay, yeah, and I think was there something that was changed in July after our initial submission, Dr. Sportsman?
Well,
the coordinating board?
it was the Wickham stuff, because they were able to help us know how to do it, and indicated that one of the pieces of information from the coordinating board that I was using that said nursing Wickham is no longer applicable, and we didn't know that. So, but I think perhaps talking about how we were able to get all the pieces together for governance.
Some of the other areas of disconnect with qualifications of institutional officers, I can address that directly. I worked with trying to get this done with Dr. Jeanette Hartshorn for several years. And she was to, serve in Dr. Sportsman's role, not only developing our proposals, but she was going to be the chief academic officer full-time, boots on the ground as well. And so when she, got sick, I reached out to the Board of Nursing and they told us that, they recommended, Dr. Sportsman came very highly recommended. And I think the disconnect is that we had identified a chief academic officer, but I was not aware that we needed to show the documentation that she was hired. I could have done that, but I know, she hadn't announced her retirement at that time. So that was one of the areas. So when we received Dr. Schuler and the site visit team report, we immediately tackled that objective and hired her. As far as the board of directors goes, at this stage of the game, we just hadn't held a meeting and adopted policies. We had written about those in the faculty handbook, but we hadn't adopted the policies and covered that meeting. It became aware that we needed to add a member to the board of directors that had policymaking experience. And I have got Dr. Lolly Lockhart, our board chairwoman, on this call today. And she certainly has a wealth of knowledge and experience with, the state, the coordinating board, the board of nursing, and maybe we can hear from her in a little bit. Governance, there was an issue that came up about the steering committee, and could the steering committee have an overarching authority over the school? And in our partnership agreement, it clearly states that they don't, and that's not true as far as the day-to-day operations. The real objective, I think, of the steering committee is that Prime Healthcare is giving, before a student graduates, $1.4 million. And I think if they're giving this money, they want to make sure that students, are showing up for school and we're operating. It's kind of just, they're supplying the funds, and we want to work together to make sure that the students' experience is benefiting them, and they're going to be prepared for life as a nurse, once they graduate. And so, between the three hospitals and with the community support, we want to do what's best for the students. On that steering committee, Dr. Rodriguez, who is our now hired chief academic officer, will take Dr. Sportsman's place on that steering committee, and Dr. Sportsman will just be on the board of directors with Dr. Lockhart. In addition, in there, we had not, at the time of the site visit, we had not sworn in a fifth independent member to the steering committee. And so, I think that was also something that the site visit panel, they noted that it hadn't happened. And so we thought that process needed to go in place. And, Dr. Tammy Edis was the Texas Nurses Association president until last year. And so now she's that fifth independent member. And that really supports our initiative. And, she's with the University of Texas Arlington, and that's where our students we have an articulation agreement with the University of Texas Arlington. So it's our intention that all the students that go through our program will have the opportunity to do an associate degree, to BSN bridge program. And we certainly think that Dr. Edis is committed to that vision, and she can support us in that way. I will say that, Dr. Schuler, we've had several calls with him, and he's been a wonderful resource, and we have done our best, to address everything that has come up when it has come up. And because we're a unique model, during the site visit, we took notes, and where the disconnect lied, we tried to address it as soon as we could and make sure that we dotted the I's and crossed the T's.
And I would add from my perspective, I do think there was probably a little bit of timing. It felt like there's almost there. There was just a couple weeks before a couple things would happen. Also, it was from the site visit team's perspective. It's a very unique model. We all come from public higher education and without partners or multiple partners and things. And so myself had concern on whether the hospitals would have influence on curriculum or admission or things of that nature. And it was addressed in the agreement, but they clarified it in the response in terms of the steering committee and things like that. Like the budget, for example, I'm with the state institution, so it's a completely different sort of model. So it took me a while to wrap my head around their model. So I think timing and just being an initial application for a brand new model, which I think is great in addressing the workforce needs, especially in the Valley. I think those were two of the things that probably it was a little bit of a disconnect.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Anderson, does that satisfy your question?
It does. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Anyone else?
Yeah, I have a few questions. First of all, I really do thank AJ and your team for giving us a really, again, comprehensive report, and your report out on the 200+ page response that I really appreciate it too. Kyle and your team put together for us to spend many nights reading, right, with our highlighters. So I do have a few questions, and most of them is related to, really a lot of my expertise, the standard 14 and standard 24 around the curriculum and the learning outcomes. If you would, just talk about your process from the very beginning, from the concept all the way through the steps of how you designed the curriculum. I would appreciate who were the stakeholders involved, et cetera, et cetera. You don't have to go into a lot of detail,
Right.
but I would really like to know the process.
Well, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. When I came on board, there was they had developed the courses that they wanted to be. There were some course objectives and some description. And then we knew we needed to get the WECM piece in there. And I'm particularly like writing curriculum. And so I was excited to have this opportunity. When we talked with Kyle and we talked with I went down to the Valley and we talked to some of the nurses, all of the nurse leaders, as well as the administrators, I got a feel for what they were trying to accomplish. And really, if you boil it down, it is to be sure that those students, when they graduate, they are not just novice nurses, that they have the beginning ability for clinical judgment, and that they can rapidly move into a competent role. So I used Benner's work, which is, sacred in nursing, to think about how we would measure that competence. And so we used her work in the evaluations that we do for or they will do for students. I also listened very carefully to what the nurses said they wanted their colleagues to be able to do. And then, of course, we had to write them. We used what had already been done in terms of the courses that needed to be included. We did added some people had suggestions. For example, Dr. Schiller suggested that early in this process that we might want to include a computer literacy for nurses, which we had not intended to do, but that was a nice addition, I think. So I took Benner. I took what the nurses said at the hospital. I took the NCLEX design test design plan, which everybody's got to have. And then I have a fair amount of experience with remediation and when it works and when it doesn't, and I've done some work in that area. And so I was particularly pleased that we could add some of that additional support, which met with the overall idea. But I think if nursing doesn't do something that schools often don't do as well as they should is when students have trouble, that remediation. And so we've added that piece because, 18 months is not a long time. So you want to really reinforce as much as possible. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, just some follow-up to that. So in
Okay.
the beginning, you mentioned you started out with something already created and you said they. Who were they?
Oh, it was the previous nurse that had worked with Kyle, Dr. Hirschgarn.
Okay. And then if I picked up correctly, so industry, throughout this process, industry was constantly involved in the process of designing the curriculum. And how?
Well, what we did was I would write it and make sure that we were including the things that and by that they, I mean the chief nursing officers or one of the administrators of one of the hospitals happens to be a nurse. So she was active in this, and then I send them and say, give me your responses about the student learning outcomes, or the courses, or we talked a lot about how they would mentor, that sort of thing. So it was a lot of either the steering committee or it was me sending them pieces of the curriculum and saying, so what do you think, kind of thing.
So did you ever do like a curriculum alignment map of those industry validated competencies that maybe you pulled from NCLEX, the standards and the competencies, or from what does, when you look at the end in mind of a registered nurse, what are those competencies that they have to be able to demonstrate the minimum proficiency to be successful? And I know in nursing, minimum is often 100%. Right? You can't make a mistake. Right?
Well, or we shouldn't, for sure.
Right.
Yeah. Right. I used the National Council's NCLEX test design. That is really tells all nursing schools, you got to have that. I personally, or at least in my other work, had developed a survey for our clients to use to say, what are the problems that cause nursing schools to not do well? And I've done this several years ago, and it's one of the things my company does. But it is valid. We validated that by both regulators and faculty. But about a year after we started doing this survey for people, the National Council came out with a very extensive research project about what were the factors that caused students and the school as a whole to fail. And fortunately, what we had done mirrored that very well. So I used that experience in developing the other parts that are not just curriculum, that how you do remediation, how you stick with it, how the faculty is involved, and that sort of thing.
Okay. So, and one of the reasons I'm asking these questions is because, I did read the first report and then I did read your response, and I understood that you didn't realize the field of study was no longer,
Right.
And that was part of the, it's too bad, because if so, that would have been your, we wouldn't be probably having these questions, because that's
right, exactly
validated and
right.
Right. So I got that. I understood what happened there. But when I look at what you've outlined now, one of the things that, the contact hours, for example, you're putting in the time of learning per week rather than, which that's fine, but I would like to see another column in there with the actual contact hours. Are they 96 contact hours? Are there 42, 64? Because when you add those all together with the clinicals, then we get a composite story, the sum of it, to see, well, is that really reasonable? And so, and the reason I was asking about the curriculum alignment mapping is that now you can look at all those different competencies outlined with all the courses you've outlined with the contact hours to say, you said this many competencies will be taught in such and such course. but you're saying it's only going to be 42 contact hours. Do you really need 64 contact hours to do that? And there's no way to really, for me personally, to tell whether you've adjusted you have the correct amount of time for the learning that's going to be required without doing that type of necessary work, right? And then there were like microbiology, and this, I'm not a subject matter expert,
Right.
but microbiology looked like it was down there in the 5th term. And so it made me, as someone, when I'm working with our team, if I would see something like that, I would ask them as a non-subject matter expert, is the learning sequence correct? That seems like that should be closer to the beginning, almost a prerequisite, just from my, novice understanding. And so if the learning sequence is out of sequence, that's something that has to be rectified, right? We have, because that microbiology most likely is needed for some of those courses the students are taking in, term 2, 3, and 4, maybe, right? I don't know. I'm just, I'm throwing that out there as that's just one case. And I know that came up, I think, AJ, in your report the first time, that there was a question of learning sequence even then. So that's one of the reasons I'm asking these questions. And then you can, you're welcome to respond. I was just giving that as my rationale, so you understood where I'm coming from.
Right.
The next question then really goes to those learning experiences. So going away from that, the award plan, which is program level, right? We're looking at that journey of the student from the very beginning and how all of those courses are interrelated, how they build off of each other, so that that they are successful at it and they can demonstrate that they can be a successful nurse, right? But now let's look, if we look at the individual courses, and then those competencies that are going to be in those individual courses, how has that been mapped out to ensure that those competencies are going to, one, be taught and learned, and the student will be able to show the necessary proficiency to move on with those, and so I know you put in different types of assessments, so they weren't, I'm not expecting them to be, for you to give me specifics about the different instruments that you're doing. I try to infer a little bit in there. Some of it's to demonstrate, some of it sounded like it was going to be paper-based, some of it would, because this is applied, but that's where the two will allow you to not have any gaps, but also not have any redundancies in this process, right?
Right. Well, yes.
Can I just, Gina has just a quick little message here for us.
Yes. I am on the board for another organization that has moved their meeting to Zoom today, and therefore also wants to start a little bit early. So I want to make sure there is still a quorum if I'm able to leave, if I need to leave here, like in the next minute.
Yes, I believe there still will be a quorum. So, Gina, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And we will see you next time.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate it. Everyone stay safe and warm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I apologize. Go on.
Well, let me say that in terms of mapping, I have used the NCLEX test plan, and I have gone back to check and be sure that all of the concepts that are important are included in those objectives of the course objectives, and in followed through. Some of the objectives, or let me rephrase, I think the objectives, you can see they are built upon, and there's similarities in the objectives for the various courses, but it's like in the early class, in the foundational class, they will be taking care of patients, adults and older adults in this circumstance, and will apply these things. Now that's the foundation. Then they will move on to, and our med surge component has the common diseases that they're dealing with, the complex, and then the acute. And that, although in all cases, we want students to be able to use clinical judgment, take care of patients, but it will be in those different roles. Similarly, mental health is important. We have one mental health course and a clinical, but we talk about the mental health issues, the fundamentals, in the foundational course and in the intro course. So I can draw it out if that is necessary, but I certainly did it as I was developing courses. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I have a couple more, but can I ask you a question about the administrative code before I ask this question? So if you would, I
will try to answer it, yes.
Yeah, so ordinarily 60 credit hours is our, for the associate. But if you go over that, you have to apply for special consideration. And often nursing is one of those that may apply for special consideration, I believe. How does that apply to this scenario?
We have in our standards the general guidelines for associate's degrees. And Paul, if you could pull those up while I'm talking, that would be great. We do not have public and private are a little bit different. So they're not following all of the public requirements of where they have to get, a special
approval for that.
Approval. Yeah, but we do have our guidelines, and I'm hoping Paul can pull them up, of where we generally want things to land. It would be up to you to make a recommendation, and the site team, if they, of course, saw something that they thought was, way out of whack, whether it was way under the normal amount or way over, they could make that note as well. But it doesn't follow exactly what the public institutions have to do. Paul, do you have that?
This was brought up in the site visit too, and I believe we addressed it.
Yeah. Paul, do you have the rule up?
No, but I know it's 60 to 66.
Okay.
Okay.
We're 61, I believe.
Yeah.
So they're right in that
I was
range.
just thinking, I didn't realize on the, so that's perfectly fine. My recommendation in that case, and maybe something you would want to consider, is you had a technology course, health care technology course for 1 hour, and you had the mental health and well-being, which I'm totally on board with, especially in the health sciences, right? I think in all of our careers to this day, which is 1 credit hour. But when you're looking at some of those, maybe it would be possible to look at the critical competencies and embed them in another one without increasing the context, and therefore keeping it 60. But in your case, you have up to 66, so it's not even a you don't have to apply for special consideration. I was trying to keep you from applying for
I appreciate that.
Blessing
on you. Yes, thank you so much. Perhaps this will help you, or at least it made me feel better. We also have to go before, once the coordinating board says you're good to go, then we have to go to the Board of Nursing. And in preparation, we have been submitting these same or similar kinds of things to the board, so we will be able to do both in a timely manner. So the proposal to the Board of Nursing, which is similar to what we submitted to you, has gone to the Board of Nursing staff. The Board of Nursing staff indicated to us that they were pleased with what we had done in terms of the curriculum and all that, and that we did not have to do any switching around or to the curriculum. The only thing they wanted to see when we submitted again is what the coordinating board wanted us to include. So we have taken the information from our site visit from y'all and the response to that and put it in the nursing proposal. The next round will go to them. I'm hoping the 14th or 15th of this month. So they will have a chance to read that and then tell us what we need to do next. Obviously, we have to have your approval first. But they were very pleased with what we'd written, including the curriculum, didn't ask for any changes. I don't know whether that helps you, but it made me feel better, always to have the real experts tell you did well. So maybe that helps.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. And Kyle, I just have, this is more of a side question related to the, when I think about students, right, and the graduates and their employability and their life. So you already talked about this potential articulation agreement, which is great because obviously, the BSN is the golden, they really do want to get to that BSN eventually, right? But this is a great pathway to there. Now, to me, now this is just personal, but I would like to hear is that the hospital's requiring 3 years of a contract of them for 3 years seems long to me. So how did that come up that it's a 3-year contract? Because the time that they put into the actual learning and then another 3 years on that's a long commitment. So you're looking at a minimum 5-6 years of a commitment to these 3 different hospitals.
Dr. Ronk, thank you for your question.
Just Mr. But
Mr.
Tom's
Ronk,
fine.
it's not 5 or 6 years. It's 4.5. So, but I will tell you that, when I approach the hospitals, they're hurting. They're to the point where the premium dollar costs, they're it's bad. Sometimes turning patients away, sometimes having, adverse outcomes on, patient interaction. And this was before COVID started. What really want to do is influence the lives of young people and give them an opportunity that their parents and their peers might have never had at a high paying job in the Rio Grande Valley. And so when you see the 3 years, I mean, what the hospital is paying, if we go to the max 30 students, okay, the hospital is paying us $31,000 per student to educate these 30 students. If we go with 25, that number is well over $35,000 per student. So what the hospital wanted to do is not only what's best for the community as far as the nursing population, but also the students and keeping them employed. And so, what we felt is by sponsoring the entirety of the education, whether that's $35,000 or however much, that the hospital would have a vested interest in make sure that these nurses were clinically proficient when they graduated. What they've done is valued that education or for the students kind of in line with other institutions, or I don't know if it's exact, but it's $15,000 once they graduate. So when they graduated, if they wanted to give the hospital or pay back their $15,000, then they would do that and they could be gone. It's not, maybe the hospital could collect on it. I don't know if they can or if they can't, but I know that the hospital is doing that because they want to retain the students since they're fronting the entirety of their education upfront cost. And I will tell you that, I'm in meetings every other week with the hospital, and what they're telling me is like, Kyle, they're worried about retaining the nurses because they say that recruiters are in their hallways offering these nurses, $25,000 sign-on bonuses oftentimes. So in reality, could the hospital collect on something if a student left and didn't pay it? I don't know. I mean, I guess the agreement says that they owe $15,000. In reality, these students, they are going to be making a very good wage and benefit, if they wanted to pay it off. But I think in the end, it's just the hospital, they're subsidizing this education. And they're looking for a return of the students, staying in the hospital after they graduate. So, it's not like a student loan where if they went to apply for a home, so this is a little different, but it's just what we thought would be the best for the community, the students, and the hospital.
Yeah. So, yeah, and just a follow-up, thank you for that. A follow-up to that would be then, since they are committed, do they have negotiation room with that, to make sure they get a competitive wage, right? And let's say the hospital is given a hiring bonus. Are they eligible for that at that same time, right? Since now they are, or does this preclude? They're just some of you don't have to give me the response. It's just, I think some of those, I'm always thinking about the individual. I know the hospital's paying a large amount for all, but the individual, and you shared earlier from underserved communities, I think it's something that they may want to, or possibly even a little more conversations to ensure the benefit of it's a fair exchange. I'm not sure how to put it in the right words.
And you're saying a little more, and we've worked on this extensively. And I think a lot of people in the community, a lot of guidance counselors, people that have heard about this think it is very fair for the student. I mean, if they don't have to pay any upfront for their cost for their education, and then to make a full wage and benefit when they graduate. And I just, from the hospital's perspective, they're going to have to do whatever they can, to retain them. So, if somebody wants to give them a $25,000 sign-on bonus, I think they already have tuition reimbursement plans in place for prime employees who do a bridge program. Okay. But I mean, short of just paying for the student's education and saying, you don't have any commitment, that's we thought $15,000 was fair.
Okay. And yeah. I will say, in terms of students being able to go on to school for their bachelor's, and I hope they will do it right away. And they can go to any school. We have the contract with UTA, and they have looked at our curriculum and approved it. But I rarely have I ever known a nurse who stops work and goes to school full time once they become an RN. I certainly never did. I always worked and went to school. I see that Lolly is shaking her head, and she did too. And so I don't think the commitment will preclude them from going for their bachelor's degree.
And Dr. Rock, I mean, I appreciate your questions. I know with some of the other questions to Dr. Sportsman, you were recommending, talk more or look at further. And, I will say that we have discussed this at length, all of these issues you're bringing up, and they weren't open-ended. We tried to address them, and we think we have, based on the site visit team's report and what they ask us. Okay. But yeah. Of course, we want to do everything we can to make, the program as beneficial for all the stakeholders as possible. Dr. Lockhart, did you have anything, from your experience in rural communities or this initiative based on Mr. Rock's questions?
We can't hear you. You're not.
You might be on mute.
Yeah.
Before Dr. Lockhart contributes, I just want to note that we are at the 12 o'clock hour. I don't want to cut this off, but I want to make sure that everyone is comfortable continuing so that we can finish up. Is everyone okay?
Yes.
Does anyone have a conflict?
Good, I'm good.
I'm good.
Okay, seeing none, we will go on. Thank you,
I'll
Dr.
be
Lockhart.
very brief. I grew up in Alpine, Texas with a Dr. Daddy and made house calls with him, and he built a hospital there, and I helped, get funding for the hospital. More recently, I have consulted with the hospitals on compliance, particularly the critical access hospitals. I consulted 25 years with the federally qualified health centers who provide services largely in the rural areas. I'm fully aware of the critical nurse shortage and innovations that's necessary to address that. Currently, I'm still consulting with Sul Ross University in Alpine on a new baccalaureate program, which interesting, we've made a lot of adaptations being rural and because of the limited resources in terms of clinical expertise and how we can use simulation. So there are a lot of very creative ways that we can create a very high quality nursing education program using creative and resources. Particularly, we're using so much more now that we've learned since COVID about how to use the Zoom and different kinds of teaching where we can include specialists who otherwise wouldn't be available to the students because of the area. So I have reviewed I'm just getting familiar with the program because I've just joined in the last few months, but I have reviewed in detail the report to the Board of Nursing, and I raised some of the same issues that you did, RJ, about the curriculum and particularly about the student experience and that sort of thing. And I have, I think that as we go, we will be making some adaptations and addressing some of any concerns that come up because it's an innovative program. It's very different, and I think it could be a real a future, what other parts of the country actually could do to promote and develop nursing education in rural areas. We have to be creative and innovative and look at the big picture and how we can measure, particularly progression through the program so that the graduates are ready to provide safe and effective nursing care to a wide variety of patients, know the questions to ask and where to get help and other resources.
Thank you. Yeah, and I agree with what AJ mentioned earlier, and when I first was reading over this, I was thinking this sounds like an industry-sponsored apprenticeship in some forms, and I know that that's in the health sciences. We haven't quite made it there with some of these, and so it's like making it work within the system in which we have. So
I think the big issue that we have to watch out, which I raised questions about to make certain that the nursing will be responsible for the curriculum, not the hospitals or the doctors or anyone else. And we're very familiar with curriculum development. One reason I signed on with this is I had a wonderful experience with Susie several years ago when we were working on concept-based curriculum coordination. And I know the quality of her work and her commitment to quality. So I feel very comfortable with what she's developing. And she's very open to my suggestions, and you can know that I have quite a few.
Pam, remind me, that's all the questions I have. I have another administrative question before I know there's, others going to ask questions, but before we vote as a council, are we able to put caveats in there as part of it?
Like restrictions or conditions? Yes, you can suggest those.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. That's all. Thank you very much for your responses.
Thank you, Mr. Ronk.
Yes, thank you so much. Any other questions from CAC members?
Mr. Hun, one thing that could be helpful is framing the tuition coverage as the bonus. I mean, it strikes me that that's very much what it is. With every bonus I'm aware of in these types of health professions, there is a length that is built into that and a commitment as a part of it. So that may be one way to help bridge sort of the academic and business communities in terms of thinking through it. The other related question is attrition rates are notoriously high in many professions, nursing with them as well. There's lots of folks who want to be nurses that are unable to be successful at that. So what about those students who end up a couple of semesters short? What happens to them in terms of this compensatory piece and tuition payback?
Yes, so the tuition is based on $250 per semester credit hour. And so say a student made it 9 months through the program and then they dropped out, they would have the opportunity. I mean, the Board of Nursing we can only go 30 students, one cohort. We have to do that a couple of times before we can stagger start. So they would have the opportunity to come back and pick up, where they left off if they had to drop out, say it was, 9 months into the program. Or if they like to, they could transfer, to another school. But if they just left, they would owe that $250 per semester credit hour if they did not come back. The hospital has also talked about giving them a job is some position that doesn't require a degree, while they're waiting to come back into the program. Because obviously the hospital has an interest if they are spending money on the student, on the front end, they just don't want to see them wash out completely.
Thank you.
Anyone else? So, okay, well, thank you so much. This has been good dialogue, especially with the concerns of what happened to the student once they finish. So I think this has been great dialogue. So thank you to everyone. The CAC is tasked with making a recommendation to the commissioner and the coordinating board regarding the current application. Based on the discussion and questions today, the CAC can make a recommendation to either approve or deny the application. The CAC can also, defer a recommendation and ask the applicant for additional information if it believes there is not enough information to make a recommendation. At this time, I will ask the THECB staff if they have any requested restrictions or conditions should the CAC members vote to recommend approval of the Texas School of Health Sciences application for Certificate of Authority. Kim.
Based on the applicant's responses, we do not have any requests for restrictions or conditions, but staff is open to bringing any restrictions or conditions forward to the commissioner and the coordinating board members. Since this is an initial application, the commissioner, upon review of the application documents, may recommend adding additional restrictions or conditions. So I just wanted to bring that forward, that is a possibility.
Kim,
Thank you.
Am I able to add anything for us as we go to vote?
Yes, Tom, you will be able to, you could initially make the motion or you could add on to the motion as the members are making motions, seconding, voting, and having discussion.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So this time I'm going to ask for a motion or second to either recommend approval or recommend denial of Texas School of Health Sciences application for its first certificate of authority. If the CAC members would rather defer a recommendation and ask for additional information, a motion can be made to delay recommendation and to further review of the specific standards in which additional information is required. And then if the recommendation is denied, we would move forward to the vote. So at this time, is there any discussion, further amendments, restrictions, conditions, or requests to delay before we vote?
First, we need a motion. So if somebody would like to make a motion.
Okay, I'm sorry. So let's first go to the motion. Can
I just make a statement? I guess and maybe this is part of a motion too. I think Tom brought up a lot of good concerns that we still have, especially when he's talking about the mapping the curriculum and getting a better idea of how these students are going to progress through the program, and if some of these classes prerequisite. Should they be in the first or second year? Are we putting the prerequisites first, or classes that are that should be like the microbiology, should that be taken earlier? That I guess some of the concerns I have is that I think deferring it for now until we get a little bit more feedback or a lot of these things fixed would be my recommendation. And I know that Tom is probably going to make a lot of, or suggest or recommend a lot of conditions and recommendations. But as opposed to putting in a volume of conditions and recommendations, should we defer our recommendation and let some of this stuff be fixed first and then come back to a vote? That's I guess I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to make a recommendation. I'm recommendation that we defer our vote.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second that defer. And some of the reasons why would be, I would like to see you to revisit the award plan on the learning sequence, specifically adding the contact hours so we can see truly how much time is going to be involved in that learning. Would like to see and maybe you already applied this to the visiting team and I didn't see it, but I would like to see that Texas Board of Nursing sign off on the curriculum, that letter that they gave and the reasoning justification as well. And I would like to see the approval of the articulation that you have moving on to the BSN, how they approved all 61 credit hours moving into a BSN. So those would be parts of the curriculum I would definitely like to see in the future.
Thank you so much. So we do have a motion to defer, a recommendation. And at this time, we will move to the individual votes. And
can I
yes,
get a
ma'am.
clarification on what the CAC members would like to see so that we can be very clear on what's expected of the applicant? I heard three things, and I want to make sure that I've got them correctly. Revisit the award plans to add, and I just have time involved. Tom, what was exactly that you wanted to see?
The actual contact hours. So are they 42 contact hours, 96 contact hours, etc. for each one? And so that we see the total, because especially with clinicals, they have to, they may be 300 contact hours for those clinicals. We don't know without it being there. Right?
Okay.
May I make a clarification here? Am I out of the order here? We do have an explanation about the credit hours and how many hours they will be in clinical. I believe that is in some of our work. Now, I'll be glad to do it again, but in fact, I believe we have that in the, at least in the original documents.
Okay.
Yeah, I did see where you put the time, weekly time that you had in there, as well as the semester credit hours, but not the actual the 90. So like when you finally do have to put this into the coordinating board's portal, you'll have to be very specific about this, where it's 96, 64, etc.
Are you saying per term is what you want?
Yeah, for the semester, the amount of those contact hours.
Contact hours per term for each course.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure we can clarify that fairly quickly, because it's maybe just weren't very clear about how that works, but we can do that.
Okay, so the first one is the curriculum plan to add the contact hours involved, both didactic and clinical, per term for each course. Second, the Board of Nursing written approval of the curriculum. And third, written approval or the written agreement of the articulation for the BSN with UTA. Is that correct?
And Kim, with that first one, I would add the learning sequence.
Learning sequence.
So when all of that is done, they're able to have a better idea from the time for learning, whether they have the appropriate amount of time or not, et cetera, in the right sequence, et cetera. I would recommend the curriculum alignment map, but that's up to, you know,
Well,
it sounds like you've done something similar to that for the
That's right.
Texas Board of Nursing. So when you provide that, that's going to be submitted there. Yeah.
Well, I can certainly do that. May I ask a question with regard to getting the letter from the Board of Nursing? When I said that they were pleased with what we had done, that was a staff report. I mean, it was just, you don't have to do any more kind of thing. But I may be wrong, but I don't believe the board, we cannot go before the Board of Nursing, the actual Board of Nursing, until we are approved by the coordinating board. So I don't think that is going to be possible to do that.
I think what she's saying is that, or, you know, we specifically wrote them and asked, do you have any corrections? Do you have anything else that you want to see? And they responded in the email that no, they do not. But what we had updated in our response to the site report and the original application, they wanted to see that updated in the Board of Nursing proposal. So they said they wanted to see the updates highlighted, and they said they don't have any corrections, and they sent that in an email. We weren't aware that there needed to be a formal letter, that we needed to request one. And our thoughts were that we went through the coordinating board and then, you know, the Board of Nursing after that. Like,
yeah, I only asked that question because of Dr. Schwartzman's comment that the Board of Nursing had approved the curriculum. So that's the reason I asked for that documentation to show so I wasn't inferring that you go back to them to ask for it. I was asking for whatever you already had that showed that they reviewed it and approved it, right? If I misunderstood when you were talking, then that's on me, but I don't think that's, you know, I think I heard correctly that that was part of the justification that the award plan as it is had already been approved by the Texas Board of Nursing.
Well, let me I need to say it differently. The staff told us that, but the board has not seen it and will not see it until we're done here. So, you know, it's like working with Dr. Schuler. But we can certainly make changes. It's very important to us that we move forward. And so whatever we have to do to move forward, that's what we'll do.
Okay, so this is how I have modified that, and let me know if this is appropriate. The Board of Nursing staff interim communication regarding current approval of curriculum. Is that okay? Okay.
But can I ask, I know it's not my role, but is that possible? I'm understanding it's not possible, right? I mean.
So whatever documentation they have to date.
Exactly. Oh, okay. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Their interim communication. Okay. So at this point, then, Dr. Langley, we would need Dr. Sneed Green to agree to this amendment to add the specific requested items to the motion.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Green, do you agree to add these specific items to your motion to defer?
I do.
And Mr. Rourke?
Yeah, and Kim, did you have the articulation? Did I miss that? They have the agreement of articulation where the college had already approved the 61.
We do have that contract.
Yeah, and so that was the third one. That's something that they already have. That so I didn't hear that on. Maybe our connection wasn't working.
We do have that.
Yeah, and so that would be the third one to provide with that. Thanks.
So we're providing what was in the, we're providing what was already in the proposal?
Yeah.
Do we need to provide what was in the proposal again? Is that what we're saying? The articulation agreement, if we submitted it already, we need to submit it again?
No, I mean, if that wasn't in the, that's something that if there are certain exhibits that we did not have. So if that was something already there, then it can just be shared with us internally, I imagine.
And that was included in
Yes.
the initial and the addendum application. I do
Okay,
remember that.
Yeah. So I guess when we
So that
talked to
doesn't have
Dr.
to be the
Schuler,
third. Yeah, that's good then. Thank you.
Colleagues, it looks like Cam is
Yeah.
no longer on. I'm assuming we've all got different internet issues. Oh, she just sent a message that her power just went out.
Uh-oh.
Okay, okay.
So I know she was taking notes.
Mm-hmm.
I am not sure if we, if we're able to capture everything. Paul, I'm gonna refer to you with our next steps, and then I can definitely try to just give her a call while you all are talking.
Okay.
No problem. And I do have the 2 items that you had suggested. And then the third one being the articulation agreement, as noted, we do have that. So I'll make sure that you get that, see where that's at. So I believe we're back to the
Individual votes?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much to you, Dr. Jackson and Mr. Stupler. So now we're going to do, I'm sorry,
Madam
Dr.
Chair,
Vincent.
I was waiting for an opportunity for comments now that we've got the motion settled. So would respectfully suggest that we have an opportunity for comments before we take the vote.
Okay, that'd be fine.
I think a couple of you have served this role longer than I have. The additional information that's requested feels to me above and beyond what the expectations were set up in the 14th element of curriculum. I feel significant confidence in the colleagues that we had who were a part of Mr. Randolph's committee and had an opportunity to look at this. These were subject matter experts in the field of nursing who put a very close and critical eye on the curriculum piece. Earlier, Mr. Randolph indicated that the responses that we received, he felt were sufficient. I guess I would be curious, Mr. Randolph, if that opinion also includes the opinion of your colleagues on the committee.
It does, yes.
So again, I appreciate our role in these conversations. I think for my sake, they have met the requirements as laid out. So in a moment, I'll vote against deferral, but that's kind of my thinking behind that.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Vassar, actually.
Is that Dr. Marcella?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments?
Colleagues, just want to inform you, I talked to Cam. She just basically said to continue with the motion to defer and vote on that. And I know she's rejoined us. I'm not sure if she has audio or not, but I just wanted to share with you what she actually said.
Okay. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Jackson.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Yeah,
Cam?
thank you. I lost power, so go on. You'll be fine.
Okay, thank you so much. We were a little lost without you, but we had 2 colleagues to step in and help us out. Okay, we're going to move forward now with the motion, which was a motion to delay recommendation and ask for individual votes at this time. And I will start with Dr. Sneed Green.
Yes, I still have a motion. I agree with the motion to defer our recommendation.
Thank you. Mr. Roth?
Yes, please. I recommend to defer with the additional information.
Okay. Dr. Marcella?
Yeah, I vote against the motion. Excuse me.
Okay, no to the motion. And Dr. Vassar?
With respect to my colleagues, I vote no to the motion.
Okay, and myself, Dr. Langley, I actually do respect all of the information that we have received, so I do vote no to the deferment based on the information that was presented, especially from Mr. Randolph and his team. So that's is that 2-3? Am I doing it right?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Okay, and where do we go from there, Cam?
So now, someone needs to make another motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve this request.
A second. Jane Michelle, a second.
Okay, it has been motioned based upon the outcome of the first vote that we approve the application. And it was motioned by Dr. Vassar and second by Dr. Mosella.
Then you could add conditions or restrictions if you would like onto this motion as well.
Okay. We would like to add any conditions or restrictions to this motion at this time.
Yeah, before I vote, I would like to add the recommendations that we already had, the same ones to this motion to approve.
Okay. So Cam, are we ready for the individual votes again?
Yes, I believe so. So we can add that as a condition, those three. I apologize, I don't have them in front of me anymore, but that those three conditions that they would need to provide that documentation or information to the coordinating board before it would go forward to the commissioner and to the full board.
Okay, thank
It's
you.
It's now two conditions, by the way, the learning sequence and the Board of Nursing informal approval.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay. Okay, thank you. We'll move forward with the individual votes at this time. Excuse me, someone say something? No? Okay. With the individual votes this time to approve the application with the stated conditions or recommendations to the vote. So at this time, we'll go now back to Dr. Sneed Green.
I will approve with those conditions.
All right. Mr. Roanoke, I'm sorry, Mr. Roanoke.
Yes, I'll approve with the conditions as well.
Thank you. Dr. Marcella,
I vote to approve.
with the conditions?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. And then Dr. Vassar.
I vote to approve with conditions.
All right. And myself, I vote to approve with the conditions. Thank you for your votes. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Cam, I guess Cam, or who you want to do it for our next steps.
Yes, Paul, do you have my notes? Can you finish out the meeting?
Sure, be glad to. And just a reminder that what this vote was about is the recommendation approval of recommending approval to the board committee and to the commission.
Yes, sir.
So the next two scheduled CAC meetings are May 4th and August 3rd of this year, 2023. Both are on Thursdays. We expect to continue with a busy year during this year. As a matter of fact, I'm still in Dallas from doing a site visit and I can't get home. Hopefully today I will. And then we have another one that's expected to be scheduled soon as well. As a reminder, the committee has been authorized to continue meetings virtually. Staff will provide an update should this change. And since we do have a small advisory committee, remember that we do need each CAC member to participate, especially when members leave an institution or have an unavoidable conflict. Please put the upcoming meeting dates, again, May 4th and August 3rd, on your calendar. We thank you for your willingness to serve and ensuring that we always have a quorum. And finally, please email Cam a summary of your expenses for this meeting, if there were any. We're required to report the amount that advisory committee members expend for meetings. Expenses may include copies you made. For example, being a virtual, you don't probably have travel expenses, but let Cam know of any expenses that you may have. So back to you, Dr. Lingley.
Thank you so much. And again, I want to say a special thank you to everyone who attended the call and for looking at both applications. And at this time, if there's nothing else from Cam or Dr. Jackson or Mr. Studer, we're going to go ahead and adjourn at this time. Everyone, please be safe and stay warm.
Thank you so much.
Same to you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Bye-bye.